Some people say life is difficult, but I assure you, dying isn't much easier. I used to be a normal guy with a normal job, a normal wife, happily living a normal life. Then she was gone, and it was all my fault. It wasn't long before I met an unnecessarily violent end. Spent a few weeks in purgatory, then I was on my way downstairs. I made a deal and found my way back to the land of the living, in a less than ideal way. Although thinking about it now, downstairs didn't seem too bad. Hello. I'll be right over. Have you ever had that one idea that seemingly refuses to die? Well, here's one of mine. About a year ago, I attempted to make a comic book with my old D&D character, who you may recognise as my talk sprite. Before we discuss the book, I feel some context is needed. In the summer of 2022, some of my friends persuaded me to play D&D with them. I'd never played it before, so I had no idea what I was doing when attempting to design a character. So, I just did whatever I thought was cool. I wanted to be a zombie, because I really like old zombie films like Dawn of the Dead. And I was sort of making up his character on the spot, so when describing how he looked, I said he was a skinny guy with longish brown hair and wore a black suit with a red tie. Seems oddly specific, but it's important to know that this was a few months after I first started listening to My Chemical Romance, and this is what I look like. Make sense now? But where did the name come from, I hear you asking? Well, my first D&D game was approximately a week after Umbrella Academy Season 3 came out, and I saw an opportunity for a deep cut reference. And so, Reginald was born. Or died, I guess. Since I was playing D&D, I needed to pick a class, and I decided to be a warlock so I could use magic. However, I didn't come up with any real reason why, and it has nothing to do with his backstory or anything he does. He just has magic, which then became he just sets everything on fire, because I thought it was funny. Back then, I didn't do much character art, and to this day, I still can't draw, so my first few designs weren't great. Despite this, many of my friends over the years would draw the deceased prick. Even many years after we stopped playing altogether, I still receive drawings of him. He truly refuses to die. In early 2024, I started making some art videos with my friends, and I needed a talk sprite, and since Reg looked like me, I decided to make him in my heart style, which is the first time I ever actually made him in 3D. Over the next few months, I made some more art videos with him as my avatar, and even some fun animations for my friends. Then, one night last summer, I was sat watching Constantine, and I started thinking about Reginald, and what if he was a paranormal investigator who protects our world from supernatural threats? Then I thought, that sounds fucking awesome. But I didn't really have the time to make a big animation. I've never really made a comic before. Tell you the truth, I don't really read many, but I thought it would be a fun challenge. I was wrong. My first mistake was how I decided to make the art. As I've already established, I can't draw, so I thought I'd do it in 3D with my heart style. But before we get into that, what was it going to be about? Generally, it was going to be a Monster of the Week kind of thing. Every issue, Reg would take on a new supernatural threat, monster, or bad guy. The story would take place approximately in 1997. Reginald works as a paranormal investigator for hire, and in the first story, we would see him called to a bank where a pot of gold has been stolen by a goblin. Outside the bank, he would run into a fan of his named Ellis, who desperately wishes to help him. Reginald would attempt to get rid of him by tasking him to gather a jar of cat piss, which Ellis then gladly accepts. Reg then travels to a nearby volcano to speak to an informant of his, who is a talking T-Rex in a top hat. After some comedic dialogue, he would tell Reg where to find the goblins. After travelling to their cave, he would stumble upon the pot of gold before being attacked by a swarm of goblins. A small fight scene would happen and end with Reg using his hellfire powers to burn them all. He then carries the gold back to the bank, where Ellis is waiting with a jar of cat piss. I was going for something more comedic, along the lines of Evil Dead, but looking back, I think it's a bit boring. I did base several characters off my friends and their OCs, because I thought it would be fun, but retrospectively makes the aesthetic really uneven. Once I had a written draft of the story, it wasn't long before I started creating pages. But this is where the problem started. It wasn't that it was incredibly difficult, it was more that it was really tedious. It didn't take long to create a new panel, providing that I had the appropriate models, but it was just a pain to keep reposing and reframing and re-rendering and editing and tweaking and going back and forth. And because I didn't want a million files, I would keyframe each pose to do multiple panels in one blend file, but then it became an organisational nightmare. Granted, these aren't things I'm unused to, and for the first 5-ish pages, I was having a lot of fun. I was really enjoying being able to tell a story without having to animate it. But then some life stuff happened and I didn't feel like doing a lot. A lot of big projects I wanted to do last summer didn't end up happening, and the comic just became one of those I'll finish it later kind of things. Over the following months, I would occasionally go back and make a new page, but every time it seemed to be less and less fun, and ultimately I called it quits around October. In the end, 11 pages were completed. I then went back to uni, made a bunch of stuff, then I spent about 8 months making an ambitious short film, and during that film's production, I would often think back to this little project, and get really annoyed that I didn't finish it. I would often talk with friends about what could have been, and every time we talk about it, the more I like the idea, and want to pursue it. But if I've learned anything from this video, it's that comics are definitely not my medium. So what about an animation? Over the last few months, I've been redeveloping a lot of my ideas for what this show could have been, and I think I can make a really cool pilot if done right. So, I'm going back to the drawing board. For those interested, I will leave a link in the description to where you can find the existing pages of the book, and tell me in the comments about how shit it is. It will only make me very sad. So, stay tuned, loyal viewers, if I have any. Maybe Reg will finally get his chance to come back from the dead.